Меня видно, слышно?
Да, все отлично.
Видно, слышно?
Да, 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 да.
Шикарно.
So, this is Ilya. It's our average Russian tea guy, and today we want to discuss the Russian tea market, how it works, preferences of Russian people if we're talking about tea, taste of tea, kind of tea, or whatever. So, what is your main impressions of Russian tea market? So, there's a lot of people who drinks tea or not, from your experience.
Well, I'd like to say that my experience is not quite big, but I've been drinking tea since I think about for 5 years. And in Russia, the tea market is not quite remarkable, not very wide, and it's always difficult to find tea with good quality. There are lots of tea that has mediocre quality, and that nowadays they do not really fulfill my taste enough, and that's
But if we're
why.
talking about average experience, I mean, families, office, it's easy to find tea in a tea bags or maybe cheap tea from Sri Lanka or from India or whatever.
Of course, if we are speaking about the tea bags, you can just find it anywhere, in every family, in every average shop. It's plenty of that.
I
Yeah.
just trying to compare Russia with United Kingdom because it's Russia, it's tea country, obviously, not a coffee country. You can find tea everywhere. But if we're talking about quality, it's, as you mentioned before, it's quite bad quality tea. But nowadays, everything changed, and a lot of people drink some mediocre Chinese tea, not organic, but kind of middle price tea. And I just curious about your preference. What do you like and why? I mean, what is your favorite type of tea? How you brew it? When you drink it? What is your experience? Okay, I see.
Okay, my favorite kind of tea is, I think that it's the red tea.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, the experience of every Russian man is connected with the red tea from the early childhood because
Okay.
there is plenty of tea we are drinking from being as a kid. And everyone who wakes up in the morning, he drinks, as you know, red or black tea. And so
Mm-hmm.
I find today I really love drinking red one, and because it brings me back to my childhood memories, maybe, and so on. And that's why I think that it's the most close type of tea to me and to my taste.
What about people around you? They also prefer red and black tea?
People around me, you mean my family or my friends?
Family, maybe friends, maybe people in the office. I don't talking about, high quality tea. I just talking in general.
Yes, in general, it's well, puer is quite common nowadays. My family is fond of drinking shampoer, shoot.
Okay.
Well, but as you know, still it's not really quite easy to find proper tea. And most of the people, they just drinking tea bags, and that's okay, that's normal, because people do not have enough time for making the tea ceremony or so on. It's just a question of hobby, I think.
What
And
is the main reason? Is it price or maybe something else? Maybe it's hard to make a good commercial stuff for good quality Chinese tea or Taiwanese tea or whatever.
I think the main problem is not the price itself, but the culture of tea drinking. You
Okay.
see, in Russia, of course, people do not pay much attention to such things as price, quality of tea, its organic components, and so on. People just want to have a simple, tasty tea that's easy to put in your cup and just add some boiling water, and that's all.
You can make the same with a good tea. I mean, you can buy good oolong tea, or you can buy good red tea and make the same process. But what about prices? What is how much money do you spend for tea? Is it correct question or not? What is okay for you to spend for tea?
It depends on the type of tea. If I really fall in love with some kind of tea, I may spend a lot of money. I think that most of people that are not in our tea society, they won't understand why do anyone spend so much money monthly on just simply tea. For me, it's just a real part of a big hobby, and it helps me to relax, to find myself in a good mood. And that's why I do not think about buying a medium or cheap tea. I think that the price is not really the problem and not the key factor. I believe that it depends on person. You may spend a lot of money on tea. Just it's normal.
What type of pottery do you prefer? Do you prefer maybe European way of brewing tea, or maybe Chinese way? What is better? What suits you better?
I think the traditional Chinese way
Okay,
with
a small
maybe some
teapot.
glass,
Okay.
small tea. Just it's the classical way because I find it's quite easy, it's quite handy, and I love the aesthetics of drinking tea. That's why, for me, I think I found the right way that suits me well.
But from my experience, I was really surprised that people in Russia spend a lot of money on tea. If we're talking about tea people, because sometimes it's so ridiculous. People can even spend almost like half of their salary for tea. It's just sometimes it's so surprising because it's we're talking about prices in Russia in general. I think it's too high for average person to pay for tea for 1 gram or whatever, especially if we're talking about good quality Taiwanese oolong teas and so on. What is your
I
impressions?
think
Why price is so high for now?
Well, speaking about the prices, the factors can be really wide because of the price. Sometimes it's high because of the geographic position. Sometimes it's high because people who are selling tea want to earn enough money. Maybe they're not really honest sometimes. Maybe they can sell not very qualified, well, not very tea of high quality. They may spend it with a large price. It's also the problem, I think. But it
Hmm.
depends on the question of trust. If you're sure, if you are sure that your tea seller is honest person and he doesn't sell cheap tea with high prices, that's really the good point. You need to be sure about what do you buy. And of course, there you can see the price, if it suits you or not, just how much you are ready to pay. That's all.
What's the difference between prices if you buy it online from Chinese seller or you buy it from Russian sellers? Is how from your
I see.
experience?
From my experience, I'm kind of a lazy person. I do not
Okay.
deal with Chinese sellers themselves. It's
Hmm.
easier for me to speak with people who sell tea with whom I can just make a phone call and talk. That's why I know some people who sell it in Russia. I trust them, and my circle of my range of tea sellers is not really wide. I think I
So for
have.
you, it's easier to buy from distributor, not from a tea seller itself, from Taiwan or from China, right?
Of course, it is. Yes.
So even the price not so important in that matter. Okay. Um, what is your experience with non-Chinese nor Taiwanese teas? Was with Indian, maybe with Sri Lankan or whatever? Do you like it?
If we're speaking about Indian tea,
Indian or tea from Sri Lanka?
Laos.
Laos is a different story, but
Well, I love tea from Taiwan.
Okay.
Had some with Chinese tea, of course, just like anybody. And well, I do appreciate masala tea.
Okay.
It's Indian kind of tea, which is served with milk. But I think I prefer just classical Taiwan way.
Okay, if we're talking about mediocre Chinese tea in Russia, from your experience, what's the average age of a person who drinks Chinese tea?
Average age of a
Yeah,
person of
yeah,
a
yeah,
tea.
who drinks Chinese tea? Yeah.
Um, that's quite not a very simple question because it differs. There are mostly it's people from 20 to 30 and so on, just medium young age.
I see,
Because
like young adult and adult people, right?
yes, because I think that's the age when people start searching for something new, for some revelations in their life, for something that's not quite common, and they find it in tea. Someone finds it in tea, and I think that's why this age is people are quite popular of this age are drinking tea. That's what I think.
What do you think about correlation between some religious aspect, maybe esoteric aspect in tea? From your experience, there is a lot of people like this in Russia.
Sorry, once more, can you repeat?
Okay, okay. Uh, if we're talking about esoteric aspect or maybe religious aspect, there is many people like that in Russia who drinks tea and have some religious aspect to it, not just drinking tea.
I believe it exists. There are maybe plenty of people who are connecting their tea drinking with some spiritual effects. And everyone, I think, finds something that he looks for himself. Someone is just finding just taste. Someone likes the smell. Someone likes the after tea state of your inner spirits and
Okay.
your health. And there is plenty of factors that can be looked for here. I don't know really.
What do you think about organic tea? Is it necessary for you? Is it good factor or not?
Organic,
Yeah.
I think when you are drinking tea, starting from some experience, you tend to look for natural components. You want to find the best. You want to be sure that the thing you're taking in is bringing health and is bringing lots of positive effects. And I believe that yes, it may be only achieved if the tea is pure, natural, and has lots of advantages of natural products. Yes.
And from your experience, what's the difference, I mean, in a case of price between organic tea and average tea? Is it much more expensive than average tea or not?
Uh, I think that it's okay that organic tea is much more expensive because the technology is much more difficult. And it depends if you can really tell the difference between the natural organic tea and the ordinary manufactured with some artificial components. Not, I'm sure that not really everybody, not me myself, I cannot always find the difference between the real tea and the tea that's unnatural. It's a quite complicated question, and you need a lot of time and practice to find out for yourself.
If we're talking about your tea experience, could you compare it with the wine testing? Is it sometimes I find a lot of similarities because wine it's a really expensive product and you can find many types of wine and I don't know, can we create a new industry similar to wine if we're talking about tea industry?
You mean global, worldwide? I think that
Maybe global, maybe in Russia. It's okay if we're talking about only Russia now.
if we're talking only about Russia,
Yeah.
um, I think that Russian people tend more to drink some alcoholic drinks rather than ordinary tea, and
Hmm.
it all depends on the culture of drinking of ordinary brews or ordinary tea or alcohol. Uh, I believe that it won't really change in nearest century. People won't drink lots of tea, but I believe that
You're
some
talking
people,
about high quality tea, not about cheap
yes,
one, right?
yes,
Okay.
about tea bags. We're not talking about tea bags here.
Okay, okay.
Well, so I think that in nearest 10 years, I don't know, people won't use much more organic tea, but maybe some individuals, some persons will definitely find it useful for them, and in that case, it may be a little bit wider. But
Why it's
as far as
possible with coffee, but impossible with tea? What's the reason? Because we have a specialty coffee, a lot of specialty coffee shops or something, but it's so hard with tea. What is the main reason why it's so hard to work with tea?
well, the tea requires a lot of attention, a lot of time, and
Okay.
it just has just another principles of working on your brain. I don't know. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it's for persons who are always in hurry, who have to work a lot. If we're speaking about Moscow, Moscow is the city of hard work. There are a lot of people who are always in hurry, and they prefer coffee, and it's natural. It's okay, I think. And at the same time, when people come home, they want to relax. I think that many people may find that drinking high quality tea with a proper, with paying a lot of attention to it may
Takes
really
a lot of
show.
time. Okay.
Yes, but it can really become just a part of people's leisure. If more and more people will learn about it, will surely find how much benefits it may bring to your mood, to your health. I think in that situation, the tea may really become much, yeah.
Okay, wait a sec. Here we are. So, all in all, from your point of view, tea is more complicated. We're talking about high prices tea. It's more complicated than coffee, than wine, in terms of tea drinking, I mean. Not in terms of technology, but in tea drinking. Okay, I got your point. So, what is your thought process when you trying to choose new tea? How you do it?
I think that most of the time I do it spontaneously, but
Okay,
still I do listen to advices of my tea friends.
okay,
Uh,
okay.
they may always advise me something good because they have a lot of experience, I think, and that's why
So it's
I
social connections, right? In some point.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it really makes it really matters. And when I come to the tea place, I may always try something, yes,
Okay.
and after that, of course, I will make a decision if I like the tea or not, and then I will buy it. That's why
What is your
I think.
experience with tea blogging? Is it work for you or not? Do you read tea reviews or something like that?
Well, I read it quite a few. I don't think that I don't have enough inspiration, enough time to follow tea blogging. But Sometimes it's just necessary. It's maybe enough to find a quick article of person whom I trust, and I'll find there some recommendations. It's also useful, I think. That's why the tea articles, yes, they may be really useful.
In terms of taste, what do you think about people who lives in Europe, people who lives in United States? Their taste is different. I mean, the same as ours, they prefer the same teas, or it's different for them? And why do you think it's different or not different?
Well, maybe if we can generalize, then I think that Russian and European tea tastes are a little bit the same, I think. We have the same taste and perception. Maybe we're not quite fond of exotic. Maybe we here in Russia and Europe prefer something more ordinary, more I don't know, something that reminds us, something that is natural for our taste. I cannot speak for all the people.
What
Really.
about after tea effect? I mean, what is the most important part of tea for you? It's aroma or its taste or after tea effect? What is the most important for you?
Well, for me, it's of course really important the state of mind after
Okay.
and in the process of tea drinking.
So it's
Because
real state. It's not like something from poetry or something. It's real
no,
state, right?
no, of course you can sit and start writing poetry after some good tea. I'm sure.
Okay.
But I think that the tea really changes your feeling about yourself, about your day, about your emotions. I cannot say the same about coffee or other drinks,
Okay, okay.
maybe about food. As for myself, I find this in tea only, because I know that I need to spend just about half an hour with my with my tea dog, and
Okay.
I will change my mood and in a good way. I think that's why it's tea is really good for changing your emotional state.
Okay, if we're talking about energy which you get from coffee, from tea, from yerba mate, it's a different energy or not? When you feel cheerful, when you feel energetic and positive, is it different states or not?
Um, of course, it's different. I've already talked about coffee effects. I'm not sure about yerba mate.
What is the difference? I mean, how do you feel it? What is feeling in your body?
For me, generally, it's the calmness. You are
Okay.
you really feel grounded, not stressed, and that's why I'm drinking tea. Helps to find the connection with your true inner self. Yes, there may be a little bit of some will,
Spiritual
yeah,
aspects. Okay.
but I think it's not just really a lot. So,
What about your favorite pottery? What do you prefer? Porcelain, ceramics? What is
porcelain.
your... okay, okay. Why?
Why? I think I don't have a real wide variety of tea accessories, but from my point of view, they are really handy, they are really easy to use and practical. I do not really love the glass stuff, but sometimes I use it all, and I think it depends on your personal tastes. For
Do you
me,
find
it's
some kind of beautiful aesthetic in it when you make your tea place, is your tea table or tea clothes? Is it beautiful for you or not?
yeah. I started paying attention to the aesthetics right from the moment I started my tea adventures.
Okay, journey.
Yes, my tea journey. Because I think that it's something that has real sense. Because when you're finding the beauty in such simple things as tea ceremony, later you will find the beauty in all the other things around you. That's why paying attention to the aesthetics of tea drinking really helps you to develop your tastes, your views on some beauty. What do you call beauty?
So, all in all, what do you think about approach to tea? Is it Asian? Tea is Asian philosophy, or you can apply it to your own life like, as a European person? Because we have two different separated points of view, Asian one and European one. So in Russia, basically, what people tend to like more? European approach or Chinese approach? And if you're drinking tea, you do it like a Chinese person or you do it like a European Russian person?
Hmm. That's a really tough question for me
Yeah,
because
yeah. Sorry about
because
that.
because I don't really know how do people in other countries find their inner self while when drinking tea. Uh, I do not really know what does Chinese people feel when they're drinking tea. Don't know. Um, I find it just for myself. I find there are a lot of individual things, and I do not really think about the culture of drinking tea. Maybe
Okay.
it's not the
So
question
important after all, right?
for me right now. Maybe I'll come to it later and start question about the culture of drinking tea. But I think it's a really large topic to discuss and to find out.
Okay, from your point of view, how we can improve Russian tea market? Is it possible and how we can do it?
We need to find all the sellers of that tea, put them to the big, big feet in the ground, and turn it.
Tough Russian approach, I guess. Okay.
Well, I think that it depends on how people are finding their approach to the tea. If we are starting to make a tea more popular, we must sure that it's made naturally, because I think it's important not to lose the real sense that there is in tea, not to make it something main stuff. I don't know.
What about standards? Maybe we need some new standards for tea. I mean, like about quality tea, what is good tea or not good tea. What do you think about this? About standardization?
Standards, I think that for an average person, there is no real difference between the certificates and the other stuff. I think, just enough to sure that the organic tea is available, and
Mm-hmm.
it's it's already enough, I think, for most of the people.
So do you think a price is the main problem or not?
I believe that not, because
Okay.
I think that there are a lot of people that can afford themselves really expensive tea.
Mm-hmm.
People tend to spend the money in Russia very strongly, and it's just about people people do not understand why do they need to pay for quality tea.
Okay.
If they are, if it is they are able to buy and to buy just an ordinary tea bags and find themselves very satisfied with it. It's only works when the man is in search of high quality. Then he will dig the ground and find the right tea for him, and he will be ready to pay enough money. I think that not the price is the problem of tea popularization, but the approach to tea drinking.
I heard few rumors among Russian tea sellers, and they're really afraid of Chinese tea sellers. Because for now we work like this. We have a Chinese tea seller, then Russian tea seller as a hub, and then Russian tea seller sells tea to you. But maybe it will change in the future, and Chinese tea seller can sell you tea directly.
Of course, when
So
China will
it
for Russia.
yeah, not that way, but is it way to improve Russian tea market, or it's something really bad for us? What do you think about it? If you can buy tea directly from Chinese tea seller in Russia without additional price.
Of course, I think if high quality tea will be much more available and widely shown to everybody, if it will be available in ordinary shops, then of course the culture of tea drinking will change. But still we have a lot of tea monopoly like Lipton and so on. And
Okay.
I think it's just about you. If you want to find a good quality, you will find it.
For you, tea is experience or it's just a product?
Of course, it's experience. It's, as we already mentioned, it's a journey, it's an adventure. Because sometimes, I wonder, people ask me, oh, you're drinking tea, you're so obsessed with that stuff, or with that ceremonies, and so that will pass, that will go on. It's just for now you're so under effect of new thing. I don't think so. I think that when we're talking about tea consumption, after you found yourself the new standard, the new level of tea drinking, you won't come back to drinking the low quality stuff. Of course, if something bad won't happen in your life. So if you want to develop your taste, your personality, then the tea is a good way, I think.
What do you think about new tea experiences? For instance, I know that you tried Laos tea. I know it's similar to Chinese technology, but it's kind of new experience out of Chinese or Taiwanese teas. Oh my God, it was a inner commercial. Okay, so recently I just wrote a brief message to guys who produce tea in Holland, and before that we tried tea from Germany, from Mr. Wolfgang. And what do you think about some unusual teas? For example, we have a tea in Sochi. I know it's not a high quality tea, it's like mediocre tea, and they try to develop something new. But for you, it would be an interesting experience to drink something like that. Not from a big tea companies, not from Chinese big tea companies, big Taiwanese tea companies, but from small farmers. Is it interesting experience for you or not?
Well, why not? I think it's any tea experience is an experience, and if I have a chance to try something new, then why not? I'm absolutely open for for that kind of experiences.
What about tea background? Is it important for you? I mean, to read some useful info about where your tea were grown, about tea farmers and so on. Maybe you heard about Global Tea Hut magazine. And is it important for you a background of tea? I know you mentioned that it's really important for you if we're talking about organic, but about story, tea story, background, and so on. Is it something interesting or not?
I think once you start consuming more and more tea, you start to find yourself for some historical points, maybe.
Okay.
And that depends on what you want to discover. If you want to discover a lot of culture, then maybe yes, there is a great history of tea art and tea production, and I think that it just depends on your interests, really. If you are not interested only in drinking and other stuff, maybe you'll find out as a culture of tea history. It's really the way to enlarge your knowledge. Why not?
Do you find the lack of information about tea in Russian language? Is it hard to find literature about tea in Russian language?
To answer
Because
this
not so
question,
many Russian people able to speak English, so it's really important for them to have opportunity to get information in Russian language about tea, how it produced, technologies, approaches, and so on.
well, there is a lot of information to discover. I don't know if someone is really upset about all this, all the situation about tea production, and yes, still I think people are quite interested in knowing things about their consuming. That's why knowing some facts about the tea production in Russia, maybe it's not really enough knowledge, but it's enough for people who try to find something for themselves. There is a lot of information in English language and available in Chinese.
But what about Russian language?
Russian language. Well, as for me, it's really it satisfies my questions. I think.
Okay.
I do not have really such demand in enlarging my knowledge for this moment. I'm really much more concentrated on tea drinking.
Okay, Ilya, thank you very much. It was Ilya, part of our tea testing club, Russian Tea Lovers. It was a demo broadcasting. I hope